At New Year's dinner, I overheard my parents planning to move my sister's family into my $350,000 condo for free. I smiled and stayed quiet. I let them pack and brag. Then I sold it and vanished. 78 missed calls. Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. I stood on the welcome mat as the freezing Chicago wind howled, my coat heavy with rain. Through the frosted glass of the door, I could see them huddled around the dining table, like generals mapping out an invasion. My father, Patrick, was pointing at a floor plan of my penthouse, while Brianna, my sister, laughed about how much better my master suite would suit her, quote, aesthetic. Seconds later, my mother, Kimberly, nodded in agreement, saying I would not even notice the locks were changed because I was always so, quote, sensible. To them, I was not a daughter or a sibling. I was just a $650,000 resource they had not finished mining yet. I did not cry. I did not push open the door and scream about the 15 years of 70-hour work weeks I had spent building my career as a systems architect. I did not ask why the people who shared my DNA were plotting to steal my sanctuary while I was halfway across the world. Instead, I stepped back into the shadows of the porch, the icy Chicago rain biting at my face, and pulled out my phone. Anger was not loud this time. It was clinical. I opened my contacts and scrolled past the family group chat until I found the name I usually avoided, Marcus. He was my biggest competitor in the industry, a man who had been trying to buy my penthouse for 3 years because he wanted the prime view for his development firm. I typed a message with steady fingers. I am selling $650,000 cash. No inspections, no delays. We close in 48 hours, or the deal is off. My phone buzzed almost instantly. Done, he replied. Send the contract to my lawyer tonight. I felt a profound sense of clarity, the kind you only get when a complex system finally balances out. This was not a breakdown. It was the liquidation of a toxic asset. I tucked the phone back into my pocket, wiped the rain from my eyelashes, and arranged my features into the mask of the dutiful daughter they expected me to be. When I finally pushed the door open, the silence in the room was not just quiet. It was heavy, like the air before a lightning strike. I saw the four of them scramble to hide papers that looked suspiciously like floor plans. Patrick cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes, while Kimberly rushed forward with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Madison, sweetheart! We did not expect you. Until at least 7, my mother gushed, her voice pitching up into that hopeful, wheedling tone she used when she wanted a favor. I let her hug me. It felt like embracing a statue made of cold stone. I looked past her to the table, where my sister, Brianna, was nesting in a pile of blankets, her hand resting protectively over her supposedly pregnant belly. Beside her, Tyler offered me a smirk that bordered on insolence, a beer in his hand that I knew I had likely paid for in some roundabout way. Merry Christmas, I said, my voice smooth and devoid of the betrayal I had just witnessed. I sat in the hard wooden chair they had left for me at the edge of the room, crossing my legs with a small, pleasant smile. I watched them toast to their new beginning with my vintage wine, none of them realizing they had just signed a contract with consequences they could not afford. They thought they had secured a luxury penthouse for free. They did not realize that in 48 hours, the only thing they would inherit was the wreckage of their own entitlement. Patrick began to drone on about logistics, his voice heavy with the performative gravity of a man about to ask for a kidney. He spoke of Brianna's high-risk pregnancy and the need for a stress-free environment, as if her comfort were a municipal emergency. As he spoke, my mind drifted away from the humid living room and opened the mental ledger I kept blocked in the back of my brain. It was a thick, heavy book filled with red ink. Exhibit A was Tyler's business mistake 3 years ago. He had managed to sink $85,000 into a venture that vanished in months, mostly into networking dinners and a lease on a car he could not afford. I had written the check to keep him from bankruptcy because I believed family supported dreams. Return on investment, 0. Exhibit B was Brianna's university tuition, $12,000 a semester for a degree she had treated as a social club, while I worked 3 jobs to finish my own. Exhibit C was the constant stream of smaller amounts, the $8,000 for my father's pension gap, which somehow turned into photos of them on a cruise to Cabo. I looked at the walls covered in photos of Brianna graduating, getting married, nesting. I was absent from those walls, just as I was absent from their considerations. As a human being, for 15 years, I had been the silent investor in their version of family, footing the bill for every crisis they manufactured. It was the invisible chain of a survivor. When you are the only one who makes it out of the struggle, you carry a heavy, irrational weight on your shoulders. You feel like you owe a debt for your own success to the ones who stayed behind. I had spent my entire adult life trying to buy a seat at a table that was built from my own wood. I thought my utility was my worth. I thought if I just provided enough capital, enough security, and enough of my own life, I would finally earn the right to belong. But sitting there, in that hard chair, watching them drink my wine, while mapping out the theft of my home, the chain finally snapped. I realized I was not a daughter. I was a subscription service they had forgotten they were paying for, mostly because they were not paying at all. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years. This was not about love anymore. It was about accounting. The penthouse is very serene, I said, my voice soft and clinical, cutting through my father's speech like a scalpel. It would be the perfect place for a nursery. The light is very calming. The shock in the room was palpable. Brianna stopped sniffing. My mother froze. They had been banking on my conditioning, betting that I was too polite or too desperate for their approval to say no. They thought they had just secured another asset. They did not realize that I was finally closing the ledger. Brianna did not even wait for the wine to be finished. Before she started redesigning my life, she pointed a manicured finger at the room labeled office on my floor plan. We will need you to move those servers and that heavy desk out by the 28th. Madison, she said, her voice losing its fragile edge and sharpening into a command. The baby needs a proper nursery, and that is the only room with the right natural light for the aesthetic I want. My father, Patrick, shifted in his chair and tapped a pen against the blueprints. I have already listed that designer velvet sofa and the marble coffee table on a few high-end resale sites. Madison. They do not really fit a child-friendly environment, and the extra cash will help Brianna and Tyler get settled. You won't mind. You are never there anyway, and you can always buy more. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the cold sensation of being erased in my own home. But I kept my face as smooth as polished glass. Those pieces were custom made for that space, Dad, I said quietly. My mother, Kimberly, immediately set her glass down with a sharp clink that echoed through the humid room. Oh, do not start being difficult, Madison. You have so much, and your sister is literally bringing a new life into this family. It is incredibly selfish of you to cling to furniture when your own blood needs a home. We are a family, and family shares. Your success is not just yours. It is a communal asset we have not fully utilized yet. I watched them scramble to justify their theft, and the realization hit me with the cold precision of a scalpel. They did not see a person standing in their living room. They saw a resource, a natural deposit of cash and real estate, to be mined until depletion. For years, I had categorized this behavior as merely needy or demanding. I had rationalized it as the cost of being the capable one. But looking at them now, I saw the trap of normalizing cruelty. They had conditioned me since childhood to believe that my value lay solely in my utility. My success was not an achievement to be celebrated. It was a debt I owed them for existing. I was not their daughter or their sister. I was their retirement plan, their safety net, and their free housing authority, and you do not ask a resource for permission, you just take it. This was the trap of their normal, a world where my boundaries were considered an act of war, and their greed was considered a birthright. I did not correct her. I did not tell her that those custom pieces had cost me $45,000, or that my servers contained proprietary architecture data that legally could not be moved without a professional security team. I did not mention the liability, or the fact that they were essentially planning a home invasion. I just let a small, pleasant smile touch my lips. "You are right, Mom," I said, my voice like silk over steel. I should have thought about the baby's needs sooner. Family takes care of family. I was no longer playing defense. I was assessing the risk, and I had already decided to eliminate the liability. Every word they spoke was just more evidence that the bridge was not worth saving. I was simply sitting in the blast zone, waiting for the timer to hit 0. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in asset liquidation and environmental sanitization. I did not pack like someone moving to a new city. I packed like a forensic team scrubbing a crime scene. Anger is a volatile fuel, and I had no use for it. I needed the steady, cold endurance of a machine. I arrived back at my penthouse in Chicago long after the city's skyline had dimmed into a series of jagged, glowing teeth. The air in the loft was cool, filtered, and carried the faint, expensive scent of cedar and rain, a sharp rebuke to the stifling, pot roast heavy humidity of my parents' home. This was my sanctuary, the physical manifestation of 15 years of 80-hour work weeks. Every brick in the exposed walls had been hand cleaned by me. Every floorboard had been polished until it reflected the light of the Michigan Avenue traffic below. I started with the home office, the room Brianna had already mentally painted, pastel yellow. I stood before my server rack, watching the rhythmic, hypnotic blinking of the blue and green status lights. These machines held my proprietary architectural data, the blueprints for sustainable infrastructure that were the foundation of my career. They were the one thing my family could not understand, so naturally, they were the first thing they were willing to erase. Disconnecting them felt like performing surgery on myself. I handled the fiber optic cables with clinical precision, labeling each one with a calm that bordered on the eerie. I was not just moving hardware, I was extracting my soul from a structure that had become a liability. A professional moving team, one I had hired under an LLC my father could never track, arrived at 2 o'clock a.m. They moved with the silent efficiency of ghosts, loading my dual monitors, my ergonomic chair, and my certifications into a climate-controlled storage unit. Next came the art collection. I had spent years curating pieces from local Chicago galleries, hand-woven rugs, original oil paintings, and delicate glass sculptures. They were symbols of my independence, markers of a life built without a single cent of family support. I watched as they were wrapped in archival paper and crated away. By dawn, the penthouse was a hollow shell. The echo of my own footsteps on the hardwood was the only sound left, a rhythmic reminder that the inhabitant was already gone. But I was not going to leave them an empty apartment. That would be too suspicious. They expected a fully furnished luxury suite, a prize they had won through manipulation, and I was going to give them exactly what they had earned. I spent the morning at a series of Goodwill outlets and thrift stores on the outskirts of the city, the kind of places where furniture is sold by the pound, and the air smells of mothballs and forgotten lives. I bought a sofa that smelled of wet dog and cheap cigarettes, with a broken spring that threatened to impale anyone who sat in the center. I found a dining table with one leg significantly shorter than the others, guaranteed to spill a glass of wine with the slightest touch. I bought mattresses that felt like bags of gravel and sheets with the texture of low-grade sandpaper. I staged the penthouse with the precision of a set designer, building a slum. I put a scratching post, right where Tyler planned to mount his 70-inch television. I replaced my high-end Italian espresso machine with a drip coffee maker that leaked from the bottom. From a distance, in the dim light of a Chicago afternoon, it looked habitable. But the moment you touched anything, the illusion of luxury crumbled into dust. It was a physical manifestation of my relationship with them, a facade of comfort, masking absolute decay. Then came the final touch, the Trojan horse. I went to the walk-in closet in the master bedroom, the room my sister had already claimed for herself, and stacked 4 large boxes on the top shelf. I wrapped them in expensive gold paper, the kind that whispered of high thread count sheets, or designer baby gear. I attached elegant name tags: Patrick, Kimberly, Brianna, Tyler. Inside those boxes sat the true accounting of our lives. Inside Patrick's box were 5 years of receipts for his union dues and medical bills, totaling $8,000, which I had been auto-paying since his pension glitch in 2019. Alongside them was a formal notice of payment cancellation, effective immediately. Inside Kimberly's box were the itemized statements for the department store credit card she thought had a limitless limit. It did not. It had me paying the minimum balance every month to keep the collection agents from her door. I included the phone number for the debt consolidation service I had just fired on her behalf. Inside Tyler's box were the legal loan documents for his failed business venture. He thought that $85,000 had been a gift, a sacrifice made for family dreams. It was not. I had bought the debt from the original lenders to keep him out of court. Now, I was transferring that liability back to him, with a notarized letter stating I would no longer be deferring interest. And for Brianna, her box contained the cancellation notice for her gold tier health insurance premium. I had been covering it for 3 years because Tyler was perpetually between opportunities. Without my monthly injection of cash, the policy would lapse in 48 hours. I was not just evicting them from my home, I was evicting them from my payroll. For 15 years, I had been the invisible dam holding back the floodwaters of their financial incompetence. Today, I was blowing the dam. I walked to the kitchen counter and wrote a final note on my personalized stationery. Welcome home. Make yourselves comfortable. You've earned everything that is coming to you. I placed the keys under the welcome mat, the only promise I actually kept. I did not feel a pang of regret. I did not feel a surge of triumph. I simply felt the ledger balance out. The debt was settled. I walked out into the rain, got into my car, and drove to O'Hare International Airport. I did not look back at the building. It was not my sanctuary anymore. It was just a blast zone, and the timer was already at 0. I was sitting at the gate in O'Hare, the cool, clinical blue light of my laptop screen reflecting in the dark glass of the terminal windows. I pulled up the title history and the final closing documents for the penthouse, one last time, just to ensure the transition to Marcus was airtight. I am a systems architect. I do not leave room for errors. That was when I saw it. An anomaly in the property's financial history. A secondary lien had been filed against the condo just 3 weeks ago. A loan for $200,000 taken out with a private lender. I scrolled down to the signature page, my heart not racing, but turning into a block of ice. My name was there, scripted in an elegant loop that looked almost exactly like my own, but the M was just a fraction too sharp. The N at the end trailing off with a shaky hesitation I never possess. My father, Patrick, had forged my name. He had not just been planning a hostile takeover of my physical space, he had used my identity as collateral for a massive debt he likely could never repay. He did not just see me as a resource, he saw me as a blank check. He could sign whenever his own greed outpaced his means. This was not just a betrayal of trust, this was a felony. It was a clinical, calculated theft of my future. I leaned back, the filtered air of the terminal feeling suddenly thin. The realization was heavy, but it brought a final, lethal clarity. This was not a family drama anymore. This was a police report. My father had used my hard-earned equity to float his own failures, banking on the fact that I would never check the records or that I would be too sensible to send my own father to prison. He was wrong. I opened the security archive from the 22nd again, looking for a reason to feel anything other than cold indifference. I zoomed in on the footage of Brianna in my home office. She was alone, standing in front of my full-length mirror. I watched as she reached under her maternity shirt, and began to unstrap something. A thick silicone prosthetic, a baby bump she had been wearing to manufacture a high-risk crisis. She was not bringing life into this family. She was using a prop to harvest my guilt. The $300 prosthetic was the centerpiece of their performance. She had played the fragile victim to ensure I would not argue when they took my home. My mother had enabled the lie, and my brother-in-law had smirked through it all, knowing that a pregnant sister was the ultimate leverage against my boundaries. I did not feel the need to call them. I did not need to hear their excuses or their justifications about how they needed the money more than I did. I simply downloaded the loan documents and the time-stamped video of Brianna adjusting her prosthetic. I attached them both to a secure email addressed to my attorney and the fraud department of the lending bank. My internal ledger was finally closed. I had been the silent investor in a family that did not exist. I had been footing the bill for a theater production where I was the only one not in on the script. I was not an invisible daughter anymore. I was the one who was finally turning the lights off on their stage. I hit send, watched the progress bar hit 100%, and closed my laptop. There was no longer a bridge to burn. There was only the void they had created. December 28th, 10 o'clock a.m., Central Standard Time. I was sitting in the first-class lounge at O'Hare, sipping a coffee that cost more than Tyler's monthly contribution to society. My laptop was open, streaming the final act of my family drama in high-definition 4K. The security feed showed my living room. They had moved in the night before, just as I predicted. The place looked like a college dorm room after a frat party. Pizza boxes were stacked on my antique scratch table. Tyler was asleep on the dog-smelling sofa, drooling onto a cushion that had likely been used as a chew toy. Brianna waddled into the frame, holding her lower back. "This mattress is awful," she complained, her voice tinny through the speakers. "I think it has lumps. Madison must have kept the good stuff in storage." "We will buy new ones," Kimberly said, entering from the kitchen with a mug of my coffee. "Once we sell some of this junk." I cannot believe she lived like this. No wonder she is single. I took a slow sip of my drink. "Enjoy it, Mother. It is the last time you will ever feel superior." At 10:02 a.m., the front door did not just open. It was unlocked by a key I had given to Marcus's head of security. The door swung wide, revealing 3 men in dark suits and a crew of 6 construction workers in hard hats, carrying sledgehammers and crowbars. My family froze. Tyler scrambled up from the couch, wiping drool from his chin. "Who the hell are you?" The man in the lead suit stepped forward. "I am Marcus Stone, head of security for Apex Development. You are trespassing on an active construction site." "Trespassing?" Patrick laughed. "My daughter owns this penthouse. We have her permission." "Madison King sold this property on December 26th, Stone said, his voice a flat, unyielding baritone. "The new owner has ordered an immediate gut renovation. Demo starts now." He signaled the crew. The first sledgehammer hit the drywall with a sound like a gunshot. Crack. Dust plummeted into the air. "Stop!" Brianna screamed, clutching her belly. "I am pregnant! You cannot do this!" "You have 5 minutes to vacate," Stone said, checking his watch. "After that, anything left inside becomes debris." "I am calling the police!" Patrick pulled out his phone, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "This is an illegal eviction. You have to give 30 days notice." "There is no lease," Stone countered calmly. "There is no tenancy agreement. You are squatters in a private development zone, and the police are already on their way to remove you." Another hammer smashed into the kitchen island. Crash. Watching on my screen, I felt a strange, clinical fascination. I was witnessing a psychological phenomenon in real time, the narcissistic injury. They were not screaming because they were homeless. They were screaming because their reality was fracturing. By selling the penthouse, I had not just taken away a roof. I had taken away their control. "Where is she?" Kimberly shrieked, grabbing Stone by the lapel. "Where is my daughter? She would not do this. She loves us." "Ma'am," Stone said, removing her hand with professional disdain, "she is gone." "Look at this," Tyler yelled, holding up one of the gold-wrapped boxes I had left in the closet. "He must have found them. while looking for a place to hide. She left us gifts. She wants us here. He tore open the box labeled Tyler. He pulled out the papers. I watched his face change confusion, then realization, then pure, unadulterated horror. It is a bill, he whispered. It is the loan. She stopped paying the loan. Patrick tore open his box. Kimberly grabbed hers. The sound of tearing paper mixed with the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of the demolition crew taking down the north wall. She canceled the credit card, Kimberly gasped, staring at the statement. The minimum payment. It is $4,000. My insurance, Brianna wailed. In the chaos and the panic, she stumbled over a piece of debris. As she fell, the strap on her prosthetic baby bump snapped. The silicone mold slid out from under her shirt and hit the floor with a wet thud. She stared at it, her secret exposed, in the middle of the dust and the ruins. Out, Stone barked. I watched them scramble. They did not grab their clothes. They grabbed the boxes of bills, as if holding onto the paper would somehow make the money reappear. They ran out into the hallway, a pathetic parade of failures, chased by the dust of my former life. As the camera feed cut to black, the power finally severed by the crew, I felt the tension leave my shoulders. The parasite had finally realized the host was dead, and the host was already boarding a flight to Kyoto. Kyoto. The rain here falls differently than it does in Chicago. It is gentler, rhythmic, a sound that cleanses rather than suffocates. I sat on the porch of my rented macchia, a traditional wooden townhouse that smelled of tatami mats and aged cedar. A courier had delivered a letter an hour ago, hand-addressed in a frantic, scrawling script I recognized instantly. Brianna. I did not open it immediately. I finished my tea first. I watched a koi navigate the stone pond in the garden. Only then, with a sense of detached curiosity, did I slide a letter opener under the flap. The letter was a symphony of consequences. Brianna wrote that they had been evicted from Tyler's mother's basement 3 months ago. They were staying in a motel off the highway, and her boys were sleeping on the floor. My mother had gone back to work in retail, standing on her feet for 8 hours a day, and my father's pension was being garnished to pay the back taxes I used to cover. Everyone knew, the church, the neighbors, and they could not show their faces anywhere. Brianna claimed I had destroyed them, and asked if I was happy now. I read the letter twice. In the past, these words would have been daggers. They would have triggered a landslide of guilt and had me on the phone with a realtor to fix a mess I had not made. But today, I felt nothing. It was not hatred. Hatred takes energy. This was something far more permanent. It was the quiet quit of the soul. I realized then that I had not just sold the penthouse. I had retired. I had submitted my resignation from the job of being their daughter. I had laid off the role of savior. I opened my laptop and sent a secure message to my lawyer in Chicago to confirm the status of the trusts. The reply came instantly. Executed, irrevocable. My nephews would have a future, with funds for education and living expenses, accessible at age 18. Trustees were appointed, and their parents would have no access and no knowledge. My nephews would have the start I never got, but their parents had made their choices, and the market had crashed. To those of you who always feel like you are on the edge, the ones who feel invisible unless you are being useful, this is for you. You are not a resource to be mined until depletion. You are not a subscription service for people who refuse to pay the bill. Walking away is not an act of cruelty. It is the moment you reclaim your own light. My new sanctuary is not made of brick and glass. It is this silence. It is the peace of knowing that my life is finally, irrevocably, my own. If you believe Madison was right to choose her peace, leave a heart emoji in the comments and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Do not forget to subscribe to our community for more stories of justice and transformation.